Hello, today is Thursday, January 21st, 2021. I'm Joe Schmidt from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. On today's podcast, I'm joined by Kevin DiLallo, a partner at LB3, and a guy that has worked in the wireless space and on enterprise mobility deals for a long time. In fact, Kevin and I have been around long enough that we've been part of the evolution of cellular services. From the early days of low-speed analog 1G service to today's rollout of high-speed digital 5G service. It's been quite a ride, and 5G could deliver some incredible opportunities for transformation. We have so much to talk about that this will be part one of a two-part podcast series. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Joe. It's good to be back. Man, time flies. I can't believe we've been working in this industry so long that we've seen this much technological advancement.
Yeah, I agree. So, as I've mentioned before, I get a kick out of my Samsung smartphone and using it. I run speed tests whenever I see I'm connected to 5G just to check the speeds that I can get. But frankly, for a consumer like me, there's really not a lot of difference in the performance between 5G and 4G.
Right. The real promise of 5G, at least in the next few years, isn't faster downloads on your smartphone or tablet, but private 5G and industrial Internet of Things applications for enterprises. Despite the tsunami of provider hype, there are several obstacles to widespread deployment of 5G network services for consumer voice and data use, which unfortunately will place this service out of reach of most Americans for at least a few more years. One of those obstacles is sheer cost to the providers. Because of the difference in frequency propagation between 4G and 5G spectrum, wireless providers will need 50 times the number of cell sites they currently operate to provide 4G services to serve the same physical area with 5G. A 4G tower has a range of 10 miles, whereas a 5G tower has a range of only 1,000 feet. It's been estimated that the U.S. will need to build a minimum of 800,000 small cell towers in the next 5 years to be globally competitive in 5G consumer network services. And all those sites will have to be connected with underground fiber. The effort, not to mention the cost of siting, procuring the equipment, and building those sites is Herculean.
So, Kevin, as you know, I live in Chicago, right smack downtown, where deploying 5G service probably isn't quite as difficult and is probably much more profitable for my provider than it is reaching some rural part of the U.S.
Joe, your instincts are correct. And another cost the providers have to cover is the price of spectrum. Spectrum has become so expensive that it's actually threatening the financial viability of the industry's two largest players. Both AT&T and Verizon Wireless are carrying huge debt loads, with AT&T's being significantly greater than Verizon's. The latest spectrum auction raised $70 billion for the U.S. Treasury and $13 billion to buy out existing licensees. Judging by stock performance alone, T-Mobile is the healthiest of the three current wireless leaders, and it's relatively well positioned for 5G with a haul of spectrum it got from Sprint. Look to T-Mobile to be the leader in 5G consumer wireless network services in the near term.
Yep. I read in the Wall Street Journal this week that in all, it could cost providers over $90 billion once all of the costs are settled.
Yeah, that's a huge number, but that's not the only challenge facing consumer 5G. Another hurdle comes from municipal governments. Cities and states have sued the Federal Communications Commission to challenge a heavy-handed 2018 FCC order that preempted state and city control over their own rights-of-way and eliminated local zoning and environmental considerations when granting permits for small cell construction and burying of fiber. The case will be heard on appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals on February 10th. If the states and cities win and the case doesn't go to the Supreme Court, the already slow deployment of 5G small cells will be delayed even longer. Consumers are also of mixed minds regarding 5G. While most consumers want improved network capacity, speed, and performance, there's a lot of concern and misinformation about the huge proliferation of small cells and the additional radio frequency radiation they'll emit. Given the sharp increase in the density of cell sites and the much higher frequencies of 5G millimeter wave spectrum, there's no debate that 5G will pump significantly more radiation into the environment. And it's not clear that earlier government studies on the health effects of radiation from cell phones would apply to 5G frequencies, whether they are emitted from a personal device or from cell sites.
Yeah, and there's more than one conspiracy theory out there about 5G and its impact on users and the environment. So, sounds like 5G is not a slam dunk winner, at least for now.
Well, it's really complicated. And then there's the fact that the density of cell site construction necessary to provide 5G coverage to an urban area would have to be replicated on a far broader scale to bring 5G to the suburbs, exurbs, and rural areas. The likelihood of 5G reaching these areas within the next few years is infinitesimally small, which will further exacerbate the digital divide in our society. And then there's the question of demand. Most consumers get their entertainment programming via streaming over Wi Fi rather than by downloading content over cellular networks and then playing that content later. Those who do download content for playing later usually use Wi Fi to do so, since cellular service is too expensive for big downloads, even with unlimited plans. 5G's increased speed and capacity, while impressive, won't offer cognizable benefits to the largest consumers of streamed content who will continue to use Wi Fi for that purpose. Finally, the standards for 5G in this country are still evolving and are very much in flux, with our three leading wireless providers each offering and still developing its own distinct flavor of 5G. Until the industry settles on a leading standard, equipment choices will likely be limited as no manufacturer wants to commit to a standard that consumers ultimately reject. Remember WiMAX?
Yeah, I sure do. Something else you could probably throw in there is another issue, and that's that some of the world's leaders in 5G, like China's Huawei, they aren't even allowed to offer their technology in the US and in a lot of other countries.
Yeah, you're right, Joe. I guess this is a long way of saying that leading wireless providers realize they're going to have to provide more sophisticated value added 5G services to private industry and the public sector if 5G is going to be financially viable at all. As a result, they're simultaneously spending half their efforts trying to sell the public on virtually non existent 5G network services, and the other half of their efforts developing industrial and municipal applications for so called private 5G networks. The problem is that the latter has not been their business model to date, so they're going to have to adapt to a different type of marketplace. Enterprise wireless services have traditionally been just consumer wireless services sold in bulk to a larger user group.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. And that's actually a good setup for part 2 of our podcast on 5G. On the next podcast, we'll look at what private 5G is and how your company might benefit from it. In the meantime, if you'd like to talk about your company's mobility requirements, you can contact Kevin, me, or any of our LB3 and TC2 colleagues by giving us a call or sending us an email. You can also stay up to date by subscribing to Staying Connected, checking out our websites, or by following us on LinkedIn.